Joining me now, Ray McGrath is an automobile enthusiast, and I affectionately refer to this segment as Ray's Garage. Ray, always great to see you. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jeff. Always a pleasure.
Ray, as you know, and I think most Americans watching the show know, and quite frankly, those around the globe, that there are some challenges with affordability. I was hoping that we could explore ways to minimize, outside of gas prices, how we can minimize the cost of maintenance for our vehicles. So let me start with a basic question. What's the best way to go about getting annual maintenance is important, is it not?
Oh, it most certainly is. I mean, a lot of folks don't even follow the bare minimum maintenance, which is in your owner's manual. I mean, I'm not a fan of waiting 10,000 miles to change your oil, but the most single important thing you can do is probably change your oil more frequently, especially if you're doing a lot of, city driving. And when I say more frequently, 5,000 is probably the maximum for me. 10,000, I don't know. Not a
So
fan of that.
So with that time frame in mind, where do you go? Because the dealership tends to be a little bit, my experience, I'm going to hear yours, tends to be a little bit more pricey, but they also have certified techs that have been trained on specifically their brand. So where can you go to get a really good deal outside of doing it yourself? Because most people are not going to be able to do the oil change and also dispose of the oil.
Right. No, I agree with that. The dealership is probably the best price, but it's also the high end price. Not always that convenient. Maybe if you don't want, you get a cup of coffee. I'm not also a fan of some of the quick change places because they don't always they don't always do the best job. But I prefer an independent, to be honest. Someone you trust. I don't like going into a place and for a $50 procedure and then getting a 700 or a $5,000 estimate to replace everything. So it's hard to say, but it's usually good someone you trust, basically an independent mechanic.
So it is, you mentioned the dealership, you mentioned some of these
Quick
15, 30
change.
minute oil change places. I remember growing up that there were automotive places around the neighborhood. Is that still a thing? Do at least in New Jersey, can you go and find a neighborhood mechanic? How do you find someone that works for you?
Yeah, I mean it is tough, Jeff, because even with the electrification of America, I mean, there's not as many cars for mechanics to fix. Most people are under warranty. They go to the dealer. It's all serviced there. Um, yeah, I feel there's definitely a loophole or a missing. Yeah, I don't know, because I know I'm flipping around a lot, Jeff, but there's no good answer that works for everyone.
So maybe you talk to friends and family. I mean, where I grew up in Baltimore and even here in Charlotte, there are still independent garages. You probably just need to do like word of mouth. Like it would be like hiring a or finding a doctor or finding another you know, professional person.
Yeah, I have folks that bring me their car to change the oil, which I don't mind because they're sort of family, but then I'm stuck with gallons of oil and I got to just recycle it, so it's not easy, but that's probably why people go 10,000 miles without changing the oil, but it creates a level of dirt inside the engine which causes all kinds of issues with the valve train and the timing of the valve timing. So it really is important to try and change it more frequently than less frequently.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand the why people are doing it. But as you hold on, most people, and we've discussed this with you, the average American new car is $50,000. That's a lot. My car doesn't cost $50,000. That's a lot to purchase a new car. Therefore, it behooves you to pay for maintenance. Let me ask you about tires because tires are obviously an important part of the car. And remember the whole trick about looking at Abraham Lincoln's head on the penny, if you even have a penny anymore, to see whether or not you need tires. Where do you go to buy tires? Do you go online and have someone put them on? Do you go to one of the dealership? Do you go to an independent mechanic?
Yeah, I mean, I personally go online like a tire rack, but I also go to Costco as well. I was looking at prices in advance of this call, and they haven't gone up as much as you might, as say eggs had, but tires are still expensive. But what you look at is, sometimes you could just tell by listening when if you're in the car and it's very noisy on the highway, your tires are worn down to some degree. But there are little ridges in between the grooves called wear indicators built into the tires. And if your tread is level with that wear indicator and it's almost in the valley of the tire, your tire is worn, and it's probably not even safe to be in the rain. Definitely not the snow with tires like that. So yeah, I know the dealer's the high end option. You could probably go to say Firestone. They'll sell you a Firestone tire, but you know,
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, Jeff.
Well, I was gonna not to step on your thought, but you know, I think it's difficult. And you allude to the price of tires not having gone up, but isn't rubber constructed from petroleum, and wouldn't that go up over time? Not to get wonky or economic.
No, I looked at Michelin's yesterday, and it was like a 200 some odd a tire, and that's what it was about a year ago. So, and I know a lot of rubber comes from Vietnam, things like that, but there's obviously the proliferation of Chinese tires. So I always and their names that sound good, instead of like Goodyear, it's Good Rear or Lion Hardy. Not that it's bad, but you should read the reviews on the tires. There's a lot of tire names that sound like it's called the Braveheart. I'm like, oh, okay, but that's not a tire brand you and I grew up with. So it's good
No.
to read the reviews. So
Yeah, I've never heard of Good Rear. I've heard of Goodyear, but that's something I will certainly look out for. Ray, how important is it to maintain your alignment and the weights on the vehicle? So the longer you go out without maintenance, tires can get out of alignment. That's going to have an impact on the wear and tear of the car.
So what I like to do is before I get my tires replaced, you almost got to get on the ground and look at your tires to see if they're wearing properly. Odds are, if they're not worn on the inside or outside or bubbly, your alignment's probably fine, unless you've hit a pothole. But if your steering hasn't changed and your old tires wore fine, you probably don't need an alignment. I know a lot of places recommend an alignment every time. It's a good habit, but it's an extra $150 you may not need to spend. So if your tires are wearing fine and your car doesn't have 300,000 miles and maybe the whole front end is loose, that's a different story. But
Ray, what about I think like air filters in the cabin, you can probably change yourself. That's probably one way. That's what I do in our vehicle. You can buy them at AutoZone or one of the parts stores. But let's talk about some of the engine maintenance things. And this is probably in addition to tires and oil, making sure that that engine is humming appropriately, not to use a bad metaphor.
yeah, I mean, the dealerships recommend you don't have to change the spark plugs for 100,000 miles. But I can tell you, when you take that spark plug out, compared to a new one, it's pretty worn. And people notice an improvement. Maybe it's psychosomatic, but when just putting new plugs in. But air filters is another item. I mean, I just got a note from Carfax telling me today is a time to change my air filter, which is interesting. But your car breathes through that air filter. If you drive on a gravel road, a lot of dust, things like that can pollute your air filter. So it definitely, maybe in the 50,000 mile range, do some of those things.
Yeah, there's a lot I think that I wasn't aware of until I really peeled back that owner's manual. And it is important, as you said, to really adhere to this schedule. I mean, that for whatever reason, the factory came up, or the dealership, not the dealership, the brand came up with these specs. Probably pretty important to stick to that schedule, although you don't necessarily agree. You think you should do oil changes more frequently than what is prescribed.
Right. Yeah, I look at it as cheap insurance. I mean, yeah, because there's just so much relying on the cleanliness of oil, and the engines today, in order to get the most fuel efficiency possible, they've lowered the tolerances inside the engine so that even if you have dirty oil, you'll start to see that you'll start burning oil, which is something you think went away in the 60s, but it really hasn't, because engines now are really reliant on just clean, pure oil.
Ray, last question for you. Outside of the oil change and changing tires and maybe some of the engine maintenance, are there any other things that we can do, outside of cleaning the car, that we can do to help minimize some of that expense? These cars are very complex, more technology, but are there any other things that we can do? Maybe our wiper blades, as an example?
And wiper blades for sure. I mean, they degrade just from the sunlight or ozone over time. You can wipe them if you want it with an alcohol swab just to try and improve the cleaning ability. But I think, a lot of people don't know the difference between a burning oil smell versus a burning brake smell versus coolant smell. So I have one son. I'm very proud of him. He can smell and listen and hear everything, and he's pretty good at diagnosing things. So, if your car starts to smell a little funny, something might be going on. So that your senses play a role. So always be aware of what you think, you see, you feel. Don't just turn up the radio, so to speak.
Or turn up the iPad or
Yes.
the iPhone. Ray, I wish you were closer because I would bring my car for an oil change to you. Unfortunately, we're not close anymore, and I'm in Charlotte. You're in New Jersey. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to having you back again next month.
Thank you, Jeff, and safe travels.
Well, thanks for watching, and don't forget we're back again tomorrow morning with another great expert and another great topic. You can tune in right here Monday through Sunday at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse, for all the news in one place, delivered directly to your email box. Check it out at our website.